And we're off. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Finding, Hiring, Managing Remote Workers for Tax and Accounting Firms. My name is John Sheeley, and I am here with a wonderful group of folks. We're going to have 6 panel discussions. We will move pretty quickly. So generally speaking, we won't be able to take too many questions, but I do have everyone's speaker bio. If you go, if you've ever used Big Marker, if you click the you click the handouts tab, you will see a number of handouts. The top ones are all related to Portia, who's coming on later, but towards the bottom, you can see, you should see something called tax speakers, and that has everyone in it. If you don't see that, because I don't see it, we will get that uploaded for you. Hey, Ryan, how are you?
How's everyone doing?
Great. So I want to quickly, that's not for now. I quickly want to introduce our speakers. Julie Babcock-Hyde, Beth Logan from Ameritax, Beth?
American Expat Tax Services.
Ameritax, yeah, no. Ryan Mitchell from Hoboken Tax, Fred Stein from BQ Tax Pro in New York and California, Amanda Kendall McGowan from someplace near Denver, Thornton, Colorado. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello. So quickly, 30 seconds or less, who you are, what, and a little bit about your firm. Everybody's offshore, everybody's onshore, you have a mixture. Go ahead, Julie.
Hey, I'm Julie Babcock-Hyde. I'm a CPA, CMA, and own Spark Accounting Solutions. Business started in 2010, and we've had virtual employees since 2016. Hybrid model, but right now everybody's virtual.
Everybody's virtual. Beth?
So, Beth Logan from American Expat Tax Services. We started in 2013. My team is 100% virtual, always has been. We cover 3 countries right now.
Just staff in 3 countries.
I have staff in 3 countries. We cover the world with clients.
Cover the world. Amanda.
I'm Amanda Kendall. I own Elevating Profits. I have a completely remote practice. We don't have anybody in an office, not even myself. I have 1 staff out of the country, everybody else US based.
Cool. Ryan.
So Ryan Mitchell, Hoboken Tax. I started in 2012. It's me here in the U.S. with an office and a home office, as most of us have. And I have 1 person overseas working for me.
And Ryan's person is actually through an agency as opposed to a direct hire. So that's going to be an interesting part of the experience. Fred Stein, CPA, EA.
Hi, I am a part owner of BQ Tax and Accounting. Been doing this on my own since '95. Bought BQ in '07, and we've been virtual. And we're a hybrid, virtual and brick and mortar for a number of years now, and we're expanding.
Excellent. And I don't think Fred means that he had to buy bigger pants this year. So
it might be like that too. It is the pandemic.
As Ellie says, it be like that sometimes. So this is directed, all of you can chime in, but this is directed mostly at Beth and Julie. How are you finding folks, right? You've got US-based folks that are stepping in fully trained. Beth does something extremely specific, working mostly with international folks, international clients. So what do you guys think? How are you finding people?
So we're doing traditional job posts, getting referrals from our team that know people, or from friends or whatnot. We actually hire everybody remotely in the state of Idaho where we're at right now. So the finding part is always a challenge just in general. And then if we have time, I'll talk a little bit about what we do as far as evaluating the applicants that we get.
So, Julie, I hear from people all the time, I can't find any help. I can't find qualified people in my little town, my little whatever. So you're telling me that in Idaho, not a highly populous state, rather rural, you're able to find folks with the right technology and the right training to plug them in right now.
Yeah, we really are happy to teach people the technology. And we're just looking for smart people that know something about accounting. And we definitely have that in our state.
It's amazing. So basically anywhere you can find folks. You don't need New York with a dense population. Beth, where are you finding people? Your stuff is super specific, and I know many of your people, they're super smart. How are you finding it?
So it's gotten easier over the years because now we have a name in international tax. So we get approached quite a bit. And every now and again, we get approached by people that are just incredibly brilliant. And we try and grab them very, very quickly, right? And like Julie said, after you get the application, you gotta, vet them and see if they're going to fit in, because they may be completely brilliant and just not fit into the way we work. But we have done cultural things. We've put out on Facebook and things like that. But our team players have approached us. They found us either through referrals or they know somebody who works for us. And that's absolutely been our best right now. Wow. That's a brilliant place to be. People coming to you. I think that'll take the rest of us a few years. And you also, though, do returns. You do Canadian local returns as well. We do Canadian returns for anybody anywhere in the world. We do U.S. returns for anybody anywhere in the world. Our specialty is U.S. Canada. And you have people on the ground in Canada. Can I ask how many besides Andrea? 1, 2. Sorry, got to count. Can I take my shoe? About half my team is up there. There's 13 right now that's working. I have one team member in India. About half my team's in Canada. The other half are in the U.S. That's amazing. All from living in Virginia, Beth is doing. All from living in Virginia. Well, I do have to be honest. And when I went out on my own in 2013, I kind of cherry picked a few people out of my former company, who shall remain nameless. Green box. But people I had trained there or knew my VP operations. I think a lot of people know Andrea Valois. AJ on Facebook, but AJ on Facebook, and she's been key. She's been with me. We've worked together for many, many years. That is great. So Melissa didn't disappear. She had a technology problem, but Ryan, you're doing something a little unique with offshore people. You have you used an agency that has employees in India, and you have a full-time person in India that you hired through another firm.
Yeah, so it was at a time you and I were kind of talking about it, and basically came across this firm. I was able to hire somebody for 40 hours a week. They only work on the things that I give them to work on. And so far, it's working out fairly well. There are some hurdles along the way.
And can I ask you, so you have this person working exclusively for you 40 hours a week. Can I ask what that cost is?
Between $800 and $1,000 a month, depending on whether it comes in at 30 to 40 hours.
Wow. Oh, so you actually aren't even committed to the full 40 hours. If you're a little light, that's okay.
We struck a deal that after the first 6 months, I was averaging about like 32 hours. So it was like, pay me $800, or if you hit consistently 40, it's going to go up to 1,000, because that's really where the agency wanted to be.
That's pretty amazing. And did you pay an agency fee up front, or they hired you and whatever fee they're getting is built into whatever you're paying?
There was no fee up front. It basically was, we agreed on a price and we moved forward. He took care of hiring the person. I think he also had somebody lined up at the time. He had some excess staff, if you will.
Okay. So again, Julie has a U.S. direct hires. Beth has direct hires in the U.S. and Canada. Beth, your person in India was a direct hire or through an agency?
My person in India? No, they're a direct hire and they work as a contractor.
Okay. We know Ryan. Fred, while you're here, Fred's a little early, but Fred, how are you finding people?
Say that again, please.
How many states do you have folks in?
Oh, good Lord. We have California, New York, Ohio, Texas, Louisiana, I think a few others.
New York,
Georgia.
Okay.
Georgia. I found most of mine through Facebook groups. I'd make a comment and that we need people, and then people would message me and say that. And obviously, I've looked at their past history of questions and answers to make sure they're not, that they have the necessary experience or knowledge that I'm looking for. And we've got to the point now where when people say they're looking for work, others will tag me in posts or tell them to reach out to me. And we just hired, we're bringing on 2 more CPAs for this current year.
Wow. And these are typically full-time year-round folks, or they're on-demand folks?
These guys are on demand. We've got a couple that are virtually full-time or 20 plus hours a week usually. We converted Ellie to an employee this coming year in January. Kathy does quite a bit of work for us each week. Then the rest are kind of as needed in what they want, because a lot of them have their own, businesses and work already, or they're working for somebody else and just looking for filler work.
Very, very, very interesting. So, Amanda, you've got someone in India and someone in the Philippines?
Yeah.
Right? How do you find those people? Because I know they're both direct hires.
One's a direct hire. One's actually through an agency, similar to Ryan.
India's an agency?
India's an agency, okay. And I pay in the off season about $400 a month to have them commit to 10 hours a week, and then during season about $1,700 a month for full time. And
you have the same individual?
Yep, same individual year round.
Okay. And then, so directed for a minute at Amanda and Ryan, what are you doing for security? You're relying on that third-party partner, the agency who owns a building, owns equipment, does the security, and you're relying that they're going to be compliant, or what are you doing? How do you know they're not writing down social security numbers?
So in my case, they're not really doing a lot of tax work. They're doing more accounting, bookkeeping, and while they may have access to tax returns per se, but they're not necessarily doing any data. I haven't figured out that technology. So for security end of it, I set them up with an email address for my company that they have a username and password, and they have access to what clients I want them to have access with through my document management system.
Okay. So you're sharing and unsharing as the case may be.
Correct.
Right. And then, and you're doing that personally. You don't have a person here administering your outsourced people.
Correct. It's all me.
I know it's all you, but I can't say that.
So no, I don't have a people taking care of the person.
Well, no, I think Fred and Beth would, am I right? Or you have a person that almost administers the other people?
Oh, yeah.
Right. Okay. Amanda, what are you doing for security?
So similar to Ryan, they get access when they need it. They don't. My person does do some tax prep work for me. It's all done through my service, my system. And then we redact as much as we can that they don't need access to. So like they never have the social, we plug that in, and then their user in our tax software can't see that. They just pull it up by name.
Julie, what are you doing for security? How do you know they're not ripping you off?
We are everybody's local. We're treating them the same way we would an employee. Watching to make sure what's going on, doing background checks, access to the clients that they need. And but we're doing payroll. We're doing, we've got taxes and everything, and they're able to see that for the clients that they work on.
Well, okay. Julie, your equipment or their own equipment?
Always my equipment, because I want control over what security we have on those equipment, and that it's only being used for our stuff. So
you're shipping them a locked down laptop?
We do ship them a laptop, and it's something that I've got access to as well. And we do security checks throughout the year, and bring it in at least once a year for additional kind of updates and making sure everything's up to date and is being used properly.
Amanda, I know that I already know the answer, but your equipment or their equipment?
Always my equipment.
Okay, even overseas?
Yep, they're always logging into my stuff.
Okay. There was an episode of Law and Order about getting a dual technology export license, right? If you're going to send, video game systems that could be used for other evil things to access of evil nations. No, we don't worry about that. All right. Beth, you have something a little unique, right? Your server is locked down uniquely. What do you do?
So we use a third-party server company. So we have a remote server that the entire company, everybody can log into and work in real time together. We can see the files, we can see what's going on. Everybody has a unique desktop on our server, and our server company runs our backup. So all of our information is backed up several times a day. They run our security checks. If we have any issues, it's dealt with by professionals, as well as all of our remote servers. Unless you have admin rights, you're locked down where you're not able to transfer the information over to your personal PC and do all of that. Now that doesn't prevent somebody from printing some stuff and sticking it in their bag, but I mean, come on, it's even a brick and mortar, you run risk of people writing down numbers and everything else. But our server is locked down and it's secure. And we take out extra steps. Everybody works on their own equipment, but they work on my server. And all of our software is on that server.
And they're using a VPN to connect from their local machine into your server.
Correct. Yeah. And we also, for other purposes too, we have a redundant server. We have one on each coast, which is really nice in case there was an earthquake in California. We can switch. We'll be back online within less than 5 minutes on the East Coast, which is really, really nice. So we've structured our company that way. We also have the ability, if we terminate somebody, we can immediately freeze the emails and we print the histories. We retrieve their email history to see what's been going on.
That's the first thing I learned on my remote server is how to delete people.
and but it's great. Andrea manages, the personnel. She manages the team. But we're always mindful of, the security. You have to vet your people before they come on and that. But I love the third-party server because it gives us a lot of flexibility that maybe other companies don't have. Because I can see what they're working on if I really want to.
When you opened up, did you start at that level? Did you say, I need to make this investment to build the company and make it work? Or were you doing something different?
Nope, always. The company actually started with me on a couch with a laptop.
Right.
But once Andrea and Marcia came on board, and the idea was either we're going to scale it or we're not. So it's like, well, let's scale this puppy. What do we need to do it? So we had very robust systems that were too big at the time for a couple of years. And Andrea, well, AJ, as people know her, Andrea and Marcia built out a lot of our internal systems. We built those ourselves, and they've changed over time.
As opposed to doing something haphazardly and getting to the point where it was, oh, shoot, we need to do something different and scale. Wow.
Oh, yeah, well, we're at that point today, but it's only because the business has, had tremendous growth since we opened the doors that we've really outgrown a few sets of systems, but.
Amazing. Wow. Amanda, we asked you that. Ryan, your equipment or their equipment? You're muted, dude. There you go.
It's my server. It's my all my emails, but it's actually physically their equipment, their hardware. It's all my software.
So there's a question coming in. Could you tell us which software they are running? Julie, let me guess. Julie is using Drake. Beth is using Pro System FX. Amanda,
no, I'm on Access.
What?
I'm on Access. I'm cloud-based.
Forgive me. Same material. Ryan is on Pro Series. Fred is on Ultra Expensive. Did I get anybody wrong? I need a life. All right. Anyway, so the answer, though, seriously, is that most of this software will run on a remote server. I don't think there's any that won't. Drake was selling their own product. Now they're not. But if you have a remote Windows environment running on a company server, you can install everything like it was the computer, almost like it was the computer sitting at your desk. And that's what most of them have made an investment in or not.
And John, the expense isn't that great to have the remote servers and to have professional IT people. And they're there. Our company is there 24/7. I mean, you can call them on Christmas Day and they're going to answer the phone and fix it.
Yep.
And the cost is, I guarantee you, it's less than you're probably paying for rent on your brick and mortar.
Probably, right? I mean, we looked at this, and I know Fred looks at it every so often. What's the cost of when it's time to build a new server, of building a new server and dealing with all those issues versus keeping the remote server. I vote for the remote server, but yeah, Ellen is asking if you use VPNs, and the answer is yes, right? Is anyone not using a VPN? You're not using a VPN for them to remote. All right, well, they're not remoting into your server, are they? You're muted.
Just remoting into my software, which is all cloud-based.
Right there. So Amanda is a legacy user of Drake hosted, which is going away. Drake is taking no more customers, but Drake is basically running their software for you on a remote server. Fred, they're using VPNs?
Yes, we have actually a VPN box installed on at our physical location. My IT guy, it's different than just the IP vanish that you can get downloaded. So we have that set, and he configures it. My system is almost identical to Beth's, except we have our own server. So we have the same type of stuff, but I have my IT guy, and it's really not that expensive to do that aspect as well. I go back and forth with John all the time on, hosted versus non-hosted. And we don't have that second server on the West Coast, but at the end of next tax season, the one afterwards, we're going to build another one. So we have those mirrored servers, and then they'll be far enough in age difference that like every 5 or 6 years, we'll replace one out.
So here's a really cool thing about having redundant servers on each coast. You can buy a few extra hours of e-filing time on deadlines. You shift to the West Coast.
If we're not done by the East Coast time, oh well.
Except for a New York return, Beth, because New York, for whatever reason, will tag that return late, even if it's transmitted by your friend in another time zone.
Well, they're a little hard.
Done that.
Every year, somebody asks that. Is there anybody in Hawaii or California can e-file this return for me?
Yep, amazing stuff. Okay, so we're going to switch. Unless any of you have another comment you'd like to make, I want to switch to the next panel. So Beth, Fred, and Julie are on our next panel. So I'm just going to roll with it. And we're going to move to managing the worker you don't see. So, and Amanda could have stayed. She didn't need to go because she kind of fits into this topic. Amanda, if you're still there, pop in. So there she is. So Beth, how do you manage, what do you have, 20 people, 25 people, whatever it is? How do you manage that many folks who you're not seeing every day, who cannot answer the phone, can ignore your email? How do you manage those folks?
Well, first of all, you got to have really good folks, right? You've got to have folks that will actually pick up the phone and email and all of that. Probably one of the biggest things we've done that has been helpful has been we have weekly meetings. Actually, Andrea does it. I don't. But AJ has a scheduled set time every week that she sits with each one of our team members and goes through their client load. What are they waiting on? We waiting on the client. We waiting on you. Where's it at? Are you stuck? Do you need some help with the tax? Do you have a question or a software question or whatever? And that really keeps things moving right along. We work predominantly by email, just as a rule, because we cover a lot of time zones. And email, you always have a time, date, stamped record of the communication. So I prefer email.
That meeting is a one-on-one meeting, or it's a whole team?
No. Well, so that's a one-on-one meeting once a week to go through their client load.
Okay.
Right. And that keeps us from dropping clients, forgetting about someone. It just makes sure everybody is staying fresh in the queue. Then we have a weekly team meeting. It's a set static date and time. And we and everybody comes, unless they've got something else. Mind you, I have contractors, so we can't make it mandatory. But they come. They all come unless they have a doctor's appointment or something else. First part of it is a little chit chat at the beginning, and then we run by whatever we're dealing with, whether it's a deadline coming up or a change of something we're doing, a change of procedure. And then we usually have like a contest or a question. Sometimes it's as simple as tell me a story. The only rules are it's got to be true and you have to be in it. And then they vote. And the winner gets a gift card. They get to pick any place I can buy an e-gift card. And that's what they get. Or it could just be if right now we're doing a major reorganization of some of our software, our client management system. So a lot of our team time has been spent with, little snippets of here's what's coming to kind of start them up on that. And then we'll do a random, how many U.S. tax returns were filed by the IRS in this year or that year, how many commissioners we had, stuff like that. And it's just a random question.
Builds nice engagement. But so you basically you have AJ, I mean, I'm assuming it's her, spends her whole time dealing with staff.
Not her whole time, but that's
a lot of it.
That's one of her duties. That's one of the things she does for me.
She's
great. She can address U.S. and Canadian tax questions as well as software. She's a whiz on software.
Fred, what are you doing, not personally, but what's your firm doing to manage the people, the people you can't see?
Okay. We use Trello, I think is the tool we use, where we've created a board where, because we have some people that work, full time, some only put in 10 hours a week or whatever, they let us know each week how many tax returns they want, what types of tax returns they want. And then Amber will assign them their tax returns. She'll just go into the ultra expensive and assign them as the preparer. And then they focus their ultra tax to see their stuff, and they know what's been assigned and they work on it. We have just one rule for everybody. Once you accept a certain number of tax returns, we don't care whether you want 1, 3, or 20, but once we assign them to you, within 3 days, you must have started those, and you must, either have questions for us or reached out to the client asking questions so that we know there's progress on it. And Amber monitors all of that for us, of course, along with myself and Tiani.
Fred, there's a question coming in. Do you use the free version of Trello? And then second question to that is, do you let clients come into the assignment there so that you're interacting with them?
I don't know whether we use the free stuff because the admin staff handles all of that. We do not invite clients. This is strictly for our communication with our preparers to let us know. We're not using it to its full capabilities, if that's what you're asking. But we use it simply right now for assigning tax returns.
Now, you're interesting in that you're a hybrid, right? You've got 2 locations where you have people working, clients coming in, and then you've got all this remote work going on, including a practice you bought that's mostly or completely remote, right? Missouri's completely remote.
Well, it's not really. In Ohio where Ellie is, because we have some Kentucky and Ohio clients, we actually have a Regis office when it wasn't during the pandemic. We're not getting it this year. We had the discussion of whether to have it for drop-offs or whatnot. And we also had a Regis office in Missouri because the person we bought, she basically works out of her house, but she had a Regis office before that as well. So for 2021, no Regis office, just the brick and mortar in Citrus Heights and in upstate New York.
So what I was getting at, though, then, too, is that you've got some folks you're dealing with in person. Are you using the same system and the same general concept, which is I'm assigning returns to you in UltraTax, I expect you to start it within a specified number of days, or are you using something different because there's a bifurcation there between the remote and the local employees?
No. We also have that little hybrid practice where we're part H&R Block in the very beginning of the year, where we've had clients come in and they will walk out with their tax return. That's like maybe the first 2 weeks of tax season, and then everybody gets done. Obviously, for the COVID season, we are not doing that. We'll be doing remote interviews where we're either going to Zoom or we have a separate workstation set up in the office that we're going to clean in between client usage. If they don't have the technology, they can come in and Amber and Misty can get them set up so they can Zoom with me there. And we're going to attempt to have their stuff uploaded to the server beforehand, and I'll be talking to them, interviewing them, and doing their tax return while they wait, and they may walk out with it. We're gonna try that. So we're extremely hybrid, and we always want to stay that way. Our goal is not to be fully virtual, but to have multiple brick and mortar places, throughout the United States.
Julie, how do you manage people that don't come in, that are remote folks that can avoid you?
Yeah, we use a lot of things. We use Asana for task management. We are in Slack all day long. We have predefined core hours for the business when everybody is expected to be at work, if that's one of their work days. We also started using a shared inbox, which has been amazing. We've had stuff happen in the past where we weren't really totally sure that we're not primarily tax. So we have a lot of ongoing conversation throughout the year with our clients on bookkeeping and profitability issues. And so we wanted to make sure everybody was getting responded to timely. And so we started a shared inbox. So we're using Outpost. I know other people that are using things like Help Scout and other things, but it enables me to see what people are saying to our clients. It enables me to see response times. But we're using that, and we really encourage, we do daily virtual huddle. Once a week, we do a live huddle on Zoom. And then twice a month, we're doing team meetings to talk more in depth on training issues or other things that we need to talk about. So we really encourage people to talk a lot. I think that's the hardest part about having a remote team. If somebody has a question, if you're all in the same office, somebody just pokes their head up over their cubicle and says, hey, does anybody know this? And so trying to find ways to encourage that communication and support so that everybody's not coming to the manager for questions, but talking to the team first is, I think, one of the hardest challenges of managing a remote team.
Beth, do you have core hours like that? That everybody, I know you're in different time zones across 4 or 5 time zones, so no, right?
No, the only one who keeps even remotely static hours would be Marcia. She's our primary admin, and the clients a lot of times will call her and she'll take payments over the phone. But no, because honestly, I don't care what time you get the work done, I want it done. And we work primarily by email because I really like, when you're talking on the phone to a client, there can be a misunderstanding. You can hear something wrong. It can come into a he said, she said thing. But if you have an email, you have a trail. You have a written trail of communication. So I prefer email.
Right. I'm thinking, so I'm going to ask Fred that question in just a minute, but my concern is that remote employee A, 3 time zones away, likes to work at night. Remote employee or early in the morning. Remote employee B likes to work at night, and B is reviewing A's work. All of a sudden, it can take 4 days to get the return in for review, and they get the review back get it back from changes. Does that ever happen, or am I making that up?
No, it can happen. It can happen. It does happen. Now our staff doesn't review each other. The AJ and I are the only ones that are doing reviews. Oof. So yeah, it's a lot. Okay. And I'm happy to say I've shoved most of that off on her desk this year. And she still works for me too. I don't know, go figure. But yeah, having the different time zones can either speed it up or slow it down, right? If you're working with somebody who's in India, he can cover a whole lot of ground at night. By the time you get up in the morning, it's like you got a whole set of stuff to look at. Or it could go the other way. You just have to have people that learn how to work together. And fortunately, with international, people don't expect that instant turnaround that they might from, an office like Fred said. Some of his clients walk out with their returns. Well, none of ours do.
Fred, you have standard time zone, standard work hours for anybody other than the people that come into an office?
We have on-site people in both of our brick and mortar places. We have 3 admin staff in our Cobblestill office, and then we have a bookkeeper and an admin tax person in our Citrus Heights office. So our phones, we use Mango Voice for our phone system, and we don't have the voice trees or whatnot. If somebody calls in, they're going to get a live person. So if they call in early, New York's going to answer it. If they call in later, California is going to answer it. So the clients have access to actual people for a longer period of time than they would normally have.
And they don't know the difference about where they're getting or who's necessarily helping them.
They do and they don't. They know. We had to dispel the image that we're not a big city, New York City tax firm. So we always talk about use upstate New York when we're talking about people, because we live in Cowtown, and people in the country don't want that big city tax people because they think big dollars. So they do know we're in New York. They do know the different things because different phones will come through with a 518 number versus a 916 number.
Ah, okay. So you don't have the ID on the phones all showing the same number going out.
Well, because we have different numbers in the different places, so we can. I can go into the web portal and change what number I want mine to show. But you know what? I just let our clients know. We have all our phone numbers in the email. You could dial any number; it rings everywhere. Somebody will pick up. We are one team, is what we're trying to put out.
And that was the point when I said to you that they don't know the difference. And what I meant was, if I had my return done in CobleSkill and I have a CP2000, I dial the phone at 7 a.m. thinking New York time, thinking I'm going to leave a message. I get the receptionist in Citrus Heights who just answers BQ Tax Pro or whatever she answers, and I can leave you my issues, get instructions to fax it in, and I don't necessarily know I didn't get an early bird employee in CobleSkill.
Correct. They know, but it doesn't matter. So clients do know we have the different stuff. They do know everything, but it doesn't matter.
So you have local phone numbers. Beth, you have a toll-free number, right?
I have all toll-free.
Right. So anywhere I call one number and I get whoever I get.
Right. There's a phone tree if you don't know our extension.
Now, you let your employees call the clients?
Depends on the team member. Some team members, well, it does, right?
I agree.
International, and what you don't want is a client saying, well, I got this company, and that, like to throw a question out and have the person like go, right? You don't want to put them in a bad position, and not everybody at the company has that skill level. The ones that I feel are absolutely, they talk to the clients all the time. There are people I don't let talk to the clients because they're really, really good at what they do. We review everything, but they're not the ones who can answer those off-the-cuff questions that the clients always have.
There are plenty of people who should not be client-facing. That's right.
Right, but that doesn't mean that they're not amazing team members.
I didn't say that.
Let me just put that out, right? So,
they're listening, aren't they, Beth?
There's actually one who's on the panel, and she's
Fred, they can talk to people?
As Beth, some do, some don't. For all new people, we actually have them run all their email correspondence through us first.
We do the same.
They don't get the go ahead and do it until we're comfortable that they're talking in the stuff. We don't want it to be too technical. We don't want to be too friendly. We kind of want, a little hybrid. We want to be professional, but also approachable. And some people write purely technical and they're like cold drones, and we don't want that. So we monitor, we give them hints until we feel, hey, you got this, go on your own. And depending how much work they do, then we buy them a Mango phone, ship it out to them, and then they're calling clients as well.
A cold drone email can be very good when you're trying to argue a point. Hey, look, my technical guy wrote this for you. Here you go.
Yeah.
They tend to CC us on there too. It's either myself or AJ is CC'd. A lot of times it's both of us.
And all those emails get monitored. That we have all those emails will flow through a single account that we also monitor both the going out and incoming.
Neither one of you is using a hardware or a software solution that the client, the employee, the worker, I shouldn't say employee, the worker sends the email out and then it goes into a suspense until a manager reviews it. You're just old-fashioned, email me that before you send it. All right.
If I don't trust you to send or not send an email, I don't want you working for me.
Well, Fred was saying that he has them get looked at in the beginning. So I was just wondering.
We do the same. We do exactly the same. It's like write it up for the client and send it to AJ or myself. And because we want to make sure it's technically correct. Because a lot of what we do, there's those very fine points that can change how something is taxed, and the penalties are high.
That's something we really like about Outpost is that our team can draft something in there. It's sitting in there. We can have conversations about that email off to the side that the client never sees and tell them when it's okay to send, or somebody else can come in and finish it.
Wow. And Outpost will archive the emails for you in one central place? Yeah. Wow. Amanda, what do you do? You don't have most of your people talking to clients, but you have something interesting too, because you have a remote person in the U.S. who handles all of the tax office. You have an EA who does all of the post-tax season conversations about tax work.
No, I actually do those conversations.
Okay.
I have an EA that does all the tax return conversations.
Okay, got it. On her own, with some review, with some what?
With some review initially. There's certain clients that now she's on her own, and there's other ones that I'm like, I want to still be a part of these conversations. Let me know.
Cool, on all counts. Wow. How do we communicate? Oh, how about the when it goes bad? So we've all actually, maybe we all haven't. I was going to say we've all fired people. I've fired lots of people. I've fired people screaming at them at the top of my lungs, which you should not do and is not professional. However, and I know none of you that know me can imagine that possibly happening, but how do you do that? Now, it's one thing, I guess, if I have your equipment or I can't get you on the phone and I want you to stop, I can cut you off. Most of you, Beth, Fred, Julie, Amanda, right? I can cut you off with 5 minutes notice and you're out of all my systems.
Yep.
How do you do a termination? So that's a good thing. And that's something we recommend, right?
Yeah.
If not anything else, that's the one thing not to be cheap on, is have the ability to get people out of your stuff.
Correct.
All right. Now, so how do we do that to a remote person? Beth, you've done that before?
We do. Andrea usually handles the terminations unless there's a reason for me to come in. Hey, I hired her. She's fabulous, right? You can give all this stuff to her, but AJ knows how to do it and she does it really well. We try to make sure that when it goes bad, that we don't end on a bad note. What I don't need is somebody out there sniping to get us, right? We immediately take them off the server. We shut their emails down. We look at the history of the emails to make sure there's been nothing going on. We look to see if anything has been printed off of their remote server. Like, we look to see what they've been up to, right? We immediately shut them down. We redirect their email so it's going into one of our admins. So they're seamless on the email. We quickly get somebody in to replace their clients, but we really try hard. I mean, usually when, say when we hire people, 1 out of every 8 makes the cut, right? We're international. A lot of people will come to work for us and they think it's a whole lot easier than it is, or they expect that we're going to give them a spreadsheet with data entry, and that's not how it works, right? So if they can't cut the work, then most of them don't stick, or they can't handle remote. You've probably seen that a lot. You may have absolutely brilliant people, but they cannot motivate and work from home. They just can't do it.
Julie, you've had to fire people?
I have fired people before. I've had people leave before. I think for me, it's a phone call. It's a Zoom meeting. But I think the most awkward thing is trying to round your equipment back up. Truthfully, most of our people have willingly come in and dropped it off and said, hey, let's meet tomorrow, bring your stuff in and I'll give you your last check, to get people to come in. But that to me is always the most awkward part of ending a remote relationship, especially if it's somebody that you never see, to okay, ship your equipment back or come in. Most of our people are within a couple hours of our office. So we have that going for us on that, but that is the weirdest part.
Fred, letting people go, not the people in person, but the people, the remote people.
Our animal is a little different than Beth's in this case. That 1 in 8, that's because of the international aspect and extremely technical, and you got to be super smart to do that stuff. And that's why when we looked into going that route, we said, no, we'll just farm it off to Beth and forget that.
And we appreciate that.
We've been lucky. We because it's regular tax, depending on their capability level, we don't just hire people, of Kathy's skill level and just let them loose. We'd like that, but we also have a training program, where, I don't mind teaching tax, and I spend a lot of time teaching our lower level preparers how to do tax returns and raise them up to where they don't need that. They obviously earn more commission the less interaction they have to have with me, and that's to both our benefits. But we've only had to terminate to actually terminate and say, we don't want you to 2 people. One was understood. It was an older gentleman who was in Ireland, Ireland, I believe, and he just couldn't handle technology. And so we said, listen, it's not going to work. And then the other one was a Facebook hire, and just happens to be the guy was a total jerk. And so I did a John thing, and we had a yelling back and forth, and I just cut him off. But we've been lucky, and we've had people leave, and when they leave and they say they're leaving, I go right into the admin aspect of my server and cut it off, and it takes like less than 5 minutes.
Amanda, how do you get people? Have you had to get equipment back from people that are out of the country?
No, not yet.
Okay, because I'm almost thinking equipment almost becomes like Beth said, or Julie said, well, you'll get your last check and I'll get my equipment back, and so be it. But what I think is interesting is out of the country, it might almost be a startup cost that if I don't get it back, I don't get it back. That's it.
It's disposable, right? At some point.
At some point, you sent them. So just a couple of questions that came in that will frame into the conversation. So one question is, what recourse would you have? So somebody in the U.S. does a breach, your attorney's going to give you a breach letter, I guess, and you're going to say to somebody, you're not supposed to be doing this. You took a client, you did all these bad things. You stole data off my server, and you sue them. There's remedies there. What do you do with a foreign worker? Now, in the case of Amanda and Ryan, you're using a U.S.-based agency, so you've at least got somebody here to sue. Hopefully they have assets. What do you do, Beth, if you thought of, what do you have to do with somebody out of the country?
Well, if it's Canada, I know how to get them. Not a problem. Something I hope we don't ever find out, right?
Right.
You try to I think at that point, if we had a data breach in, say India, and honestly, I don't think he would ever do that for us. I would hope not. But if we did, I think at that point, we're down to just mitigating the damages and making sure that we do right by the client. As far as pursuing a legal action in India, I just don't see myself doing it.
Okay.
And honestly, it depends there too, right? Is the cost of litigation going to be more than, you have to weigh those things.
Well, back to your original point, too, the cost of building the system to prevent some of these things is the idea here. If they can't steal the client names or the client data, they're not going to either do something evil with it or use that to try and compete against you, right? They couldn't get it, so that even if they wanted to do it, they didn't.
But but they can steal the client names and the social security numbers. I don't care if they're online, because they can write it down on a piece of paper, right? Even if they can't print it off my server, they can write it down. They can take pictures of their screen with their phone. It's the same thing though. If they're sitting in your office, they can do that, right?
Yep. Beth, you're using cell phones for your staff? Everyone has their own cell phone?
I have Vonage. If they want desk phones, we provide desk phones for them. Most of my staff just loop them into their cell phones. But
right, because they're using an app on the cell phone. Fred, you have a mixture of that, or everybody has a phone?
We have a mixture of that. Of course, all the offices have phones. We pay $20 per month for every handset we have. So our phone costs are like $240 a month for 12 handsets. And then we also have soft phones. We have text messaging through the phones. It's one account that just the admin people utilize. But no, we don't give them cell phones. Most of our main people have hardline phones that will plug into the internet, the VoIP phones, and some don't, and we're going to get them more.
Right. All right. I didn't mean that you provided them with a cell phone. I think what we meant was they have an app on the cell phone that they're utilizing your number, but through the app. What are you doing for them?
We're using phone.com. Our virtual team members all have the app installed and are using that. Text messages all go through the phone.com app. And we end up zapping them over to Slack so that whoever is getting it, because with phone.com, they all come into one inbox. They can go out from multiple, but they all come into one. So we have it zap into Slack so that people can find their responses.
So when you say Zap, you're using Zapier,
Yeah.
right? Using a connection tool to make the two apps talk to each other.
Yep.
Right. And everybody's on Slack?
Yes.
And you have customers coming into Slack too, or no?
No, that is just internal communication.
Okay, got it. And now a proud member of Salesforce.com.
Exactly.
Yeah. Amanda, how do you communicate with India and the Philippines and Colorado Springs?
We do everything through Google Chat.
Okay. Interesting. And no one's had a data breach, right? No, not caused by anything. Thank goodness. Yeah, if we did, we wouldn't tell you anyway. But no one's had a data breach. Thank goodness. Okay, I do want to move on to the next section, which is there was a question, Amanda. If you would just type in the chat who your agency was that you used, and I'll get Ryan's from him, or if Ryan is still listening, he can type it in for us. Okay, so next I would like to talk a bit about platforms and software requirements, what we need. And we kind of touched on this in speaking through with everybody now. So everyone's asking how many remote workers and how many clients. So I'm going to say that Ryan uses MMC. They're in Chicago. I remember that. So how many remote workers do you have? That's an interesting metric if you want to share it. How many clients do you serve? I don't think is a valid metric anymore. And I've said this before, if you're comparing storefront transactional tax businesses to storefront transactional tax businesses, when I own block offices, we all said, oh, I do this many, I do that many. And that was valid because we're all doing the same type of work. But I don't think we all do the same type of work anymore. So I don't know that returns prepared is necessarily a valid metric. Anyone want to share how many workers they have?
We're currently sitting at 13. We'll go up as high as 20 at some points. I very rarely will go below 12. And we work full-time year-round.
Well, that's because December 15th is a due date, assuming they don't meet January 15th.
We have that lovely 11.5-month tax season every year. We were really enjoying all the whining about the July extension this year from those of you who are used to taking off on April 16th. We really enjoyed it.
Okay, Fred, you want to share?
We're almost very similar to Beth again here. We have about 10 people that are on year round in some capacity. Some are only part-time, but most of them are full-time. And then during the tax season, we'll ramp up to just under 25 people.
Wow.
Which again, it sounds like a lot, but some of them are very part-time. We're only giving me 5 to 10 hours a week. And that's the beauty of remote workers who just want to use us as a filler feeding system.
Well, yeah, it was either you or drive for Uber, and they chose Fred. All right. Julie, Julie, you want to share staff sizing?
Yeah, we've got 6, including me, but part of my team is part-time, and we are probably the only tax is not our major thing. Right. We do a few tax returns. We outsource most of our tax.
I was going to say, will you tell them that secret? Okay, yeah. Julie, so Julie's interesting. In addition to I like Julie, and this is a pretext to get to talk to her, Julie is different than the rest of us in that she is more traditionally tax and financial work with, oh yeah, you need a tax return, we'll do that. And they've outsourced the entire tax practice. This is the second year coming up?
Yeah.
Right? They've outsourced the tax practice. So I think that's kind of neat because we really are your trusted advisor, right? Because you're trusting us to have someone else do the tax work and bring it in.
Absolutely. We just can't do both in the first quarter of the year well. So that's how we decided to deal with the seasonality.
Without being tired. Anyway, Julie has to tell us one day what she does because she doesn't do payroll anymore either. That all goes to Gusto. So
we don't do anything. We just collect a check.
We just sit there.
No, we do. We do a lot of profitability coaching and bookkeeping. That's what we do.
Got it. Okay. Super, super cool. That took care of the questions. So I want to talk a little bit about systems and servers. So some of this we've actually already touched on. So we'll talk about them a little bit now. And I think we already know what everyone is doing, right? Julie, what do? You have a server they're logging into? It's remote. It's in your office, in your house.
Everything for bookkeeping is all cloud-based. So we're using QuickBooks Online. We're using ShareFile. Everybody's got ShareFile Drive Mapper on their laptop that they work on. So everything's stored in the cloud. We're using HubDoc. We're using LastPass. We're using, like, nothing should ever be on somebody's laptop.
Tell everyone what HubDoc is real quick.
HubDoc is we use that for like accounts payable and receipts management for our accounting clients. So they're sending in invoices that or vendor bills that need to be paid, or just copies of receipts so that we've got them organized.
Right. That was a very, very truncated version of HubDoc, but okay. And LastPass allows you to use unique long passwords, and stores them. But what's the really neat part when you have a team that you can do with LastPass?
It's amazing because I can actually share passwords out. So we might have read-only. We even do that with read-only access to our clients' bank accounts. We get read-only access. I put that password in LastPass, and I share that with the team members that need it, and they never see what the password is. And so when they go, we just take it away from them, and they don't have access anymore.
And they never knew what the password was.
Correct.
Other than their access to LastPass, would you take away?
Correct.
Yep. Yeah. I did not use LastPass until Amanda introduced me to it, and I now see the tremendous value of it. You know, aside from it being a bad idea to share passwords, what did the IRS do this year? They made it a felony to share your e-services login credentials. It previously was not a crime. Now it is. So don't let your team log into e-services on your behalf, which also means don't let them use some of these apps that you need the e-services password to get into. Fred, you look white as a ghost. I can't hear you, but
I've been a felon before. I'm not too worried about it.
I'm not worried either. Just okay. So Fred, you have Amanda. Everything you're using is also cloud-based, right? Google Drive or what? TaxDome.
Yep, we're on TaxDome. We use Drake hosted. Yeah, everything's cloud-based right now until Drake hosted goes away.
Right. Well, you can still say cloud-based. I'll show you what I'm using, and you'll be all happy with it. All right. So, Ryan, what are you using? Your person overseas is what are they accessing?
So bank statements, documents, that sort of stuff is all through ShareFile. I have a few clients on QuickBooks Online, but the majority of my accounting clients are all actually in QuickBooks Desktop, and we're using a program called Qbox, which is allowing us to utilize the desktop version of QuickBooks in real time, working on the same file.
And what, about $100 a year because you have one folder, right? You're sharing all with him.
It's all of the clients that I can control are in one folder. Clients where they also have access to it. So we're doing overnight work while the client's going in and printing checks. Though it's $120 a folder, basically.
Right. Okay. Basically per share, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, Fred, you're using Qbox extensively, or what do you?
Not extensively. We have not gotten to the point that some people recommend that we force our clients to use one platform. So we have a bunch of our clients on QBO. We have a bunch of our clients on desktop. We utilize Qbox to make the desktop like the QBO. So they both have access for it. So we don't deal with accountants' copies. We don't deal with backups. So we have instant access to their stuff. So,
you weren't on that webinar yesterday where they said you shouldn't do that, right? Choose a platform. You were on that webinar, right?
I wasn't. The ones with you and Amanda? No, I actually want to watch them again afterwards. Leah's been doing them, and she loves them. Great stuff. And as I told her, it's easy to tell people to do this stuff, but to actually, do this ourselves can be difficult at times.
Them that can do, them that can't teach. Amanda, everybody's QBO for you, right? No desktop.
That's all we do. If they're not on QBO or not willing to switch, they're not our client.
See, I'm older than her, and I like the older version of the desktop. So it's the old dinosaur people. We got to have the desktop.
You're not using QuickBooks 2014 still, are you, Fred?
We have people in 2008, believe it or not, but
Okay. That's a hard one, is to have that many versions.
well, they were on that. We got a new client coming in 2008 that's getting upgraded. So yeah.
So I keep saying poor Beth is using Pro System FX, but you're using its Access, right?
I use Access.
All right. So when using Access, what are you doing with data files and things? How are we sharing that stuff with people?
We have an S drive. We have a shared drive on our remote server.
Okay.
Now, that being said, this year, we're moving to a more integrated solution, but currently we have the client files are set up on the shared drive and everybody can access them. Unless they're a new hire, most of the time our new hires, we lock them down so they can only see the clients we assign to them. They can't see anything else. I don't want them taking my stuff. I don't want them taking my worksheets, my work papers, the clients. If I don't know you, we'll lock you down. Right?
Proprietary stuff. I didn't even think of that. Let's start our own international practice by working for Beth for a week. Got it.
I have a lot of people that want to mentor under us, and I really appreciate it, and it's very flattering, but you have to be concerned that people are going to come in and just take your stuff, right? So everything is on the remote server. So we have some cloud applications like our tax software Access. It's, cloud, but we have some other, installed perpetual licenses, like currently our Acrobat license is installed, and we are upgrading, Lisa, just so you know. But all that stuff, it's not cloud-based. It's actually on our server. We just have to provide the correct licensing, and my server team takes care of it.
Anyone have an idea of what their costs are for some of this stuff? Like can you share, Beth, like what's the cost of Access and your other communication tools?
Oh, y'all don't want to know what Access costs.
I'm thinking it's 20, but go ahead.
Let's go with, I have a really big license and I pay a lot of money for my software.
It makes UltraTax look cheap.
It makes UltraTax look cheap. Absolutely. Yeah, and Portia just said 145 per client was her total last year. I don't think I'm that high, but as far as the server goes, as far as maintaining, and I consider it my office, right? It's like a brick and mortar office. It's just up in the cloud somewhere. It's going to cost me about $120 per person on the team per month, but that is our Exchange emails. That is all of our software. They upgrade all of our server licenses. Everything gets done. They're currently rebuilding. They are building me 3 brand new servers. It's not costing me a dime, right? It's part of my contract.
Is that flat, Beth, or is that just the average and they're charging you based on bandwidth?
No, I pay so much per person, and we can drop them on and off.
Right, but per person per month. Very interesting.
Per person per month.
Right.
And then if we need additional storage, we get charged for that. It's not that expensive. Right. Our storage needs to go down once we make the switch over. But no, I don't find it that expensive. I honestly don't. Like right now, I'm paying about $1,700 a month for 13 people.
For 13 people, including, you said, email and the licenses for Office and everything else that you're using.
Actually, I take it back. There's 15 of us on right now. 2 of us, my husband and one of my sons does some side work for me. They're not part of my 13 team. So 15 people, it's like $1,700 a month.
Fred, if you had to guess your IT costs for the year, not including new machine, new server.
Oh, we're talking about just for maintaining my server, and we're not talking software costs for everything else.
Well, all right, you got UltraTax $8,000, $10,000.
We're still on the teaser thing, but we expect that to be closer to 10 or 12.
Okay. Then what's everything else cost?
I can give that to you in a few minutes when I open up my QuickBooks. But we pay, it costs us probably about $400 a month for just my IT guy, as opposed to having the hosted server. We have that, and my cost of my server was less than $10,000, and we expect that to last 7 to 8 years, if not 10. I believe when I looked at our software costs, it might have been upwards of $30,000, but I can double check that. I had the QuickBooks open earlier, and I'll do that again and let you know.
Julie, what are your costs if you want to share? You don't have to share.
I honestly don't remember off the top of my head, but it's a lot because we are paying for cloud-based platforms that we're either paying per employee, even for my part-time people, or we're paying per client. And we've got a huge tech stack that we use with our accounting clients. So it's a lot.
That stuff is all absorbed by you, or is some of it rebuild, like zero UBO?
We build most of it into our pricing.
Okay.
So there's some that clients pay direct, but a lot of it we build into our pricing.
Got it. Amanda, I know that it's going away, but what was Drake hosted? $90 per person per month with a discount to pay for the year, something like that?
It's $50 a month per person.
Okay. Very nice. That's a very good deal because that includes the server and everything else.
You still have to buy the software separate. So that's in addition to the software.
Ryan, what are your costs, my brother?
It's just about 10 grand all in.
Okay.
It's between Gmail, some hosting of websites, QuickBooks, tax software, tax up software, all the way through.
You have a local server?
I do.
Okay.
So I have a server in my office, and then I'm doing offsite backups.
Yeah, backups I thought were a foregone conclusion that everyone had an offsite backup. So I really didn't bring that up, but
You'd be surprised.
everyone should have a offsite backup, please, daily, if not sooner. And I won't pick on anyone, but you should also take your backup every so often and try and pull a test file off it or try and reinstall it. I heard a story about a guy who had all his backups and it turned out his tape drive wasn't working. So,
John, I got my software costs up. They went from 10,000 in 17 to 23,000 in 19 and 28,000 this year,
including UltraTax.
Including UltraTax, yes.
Okay. Got it. Ouch. But most of that is driven by number of users, number of clients.
Yes, we don't have any pay per user applications out there.
Right. But I understand that, but I'm just saying that, you're also buying unlimited everything on UltraTax these days.
No, we have a lot of pay per returns because we're on a new 4 year. We had them for 3 years. We went back to Pro Series and then came back. So I got a brand new 4-year teaser deal that'll go. So where they were talking $145 per return in software costs, from my UltraTax cost is going to be less than $10 a return.
Got it. Good deal. Anyone want to add anything about IT or IT costs or systems?
Don't scrimp. Just don't scrimp. Make sure you're running your cybersecurity checks. Make sure you're hiring the right people. In addition to the backups we have done by our server company, we occasionally will pull the old years off the server. And AJ lives in Canada. I live in Virginia Beach. She and I both have hard drives. We pull them off. So there is a copy in Canada and there's a copy in the United States. So if one of our houses burned down, we still have the files. But it's only her and it's only me. Nobody else can download these.
One interesting thing you all have in common is that you're controlling the equipment. It's your equipment, right? I think Fred's the only one that's not his equipment, but he still said he's controlling what's going on in the antivirus and all of that related stuff, and you're checking that it's there.
And like Beth, they can't download onto their system either. We have all that blocked through the Windows server, server app.
Okay, right. Well, what we're saying though too, less about them taking your stuff and more about what can they put on the computer, what can they do, right? And we're controlling all of that too. Yeah. Okay. Wow. Fred, anything you'd add about systems other than don't scrimp?
Don't scrimp. Redundancy is big. We've got mirrored hard drives, and it all falls back to don't scrimp. Pay attention. Make sure you do those checks. Make sure you monitor what your contractors / employees are doing on a regular basis. You want to hire people that you trust. Somebody asked me what my thoughts are about contractors taking clients from me or whatnot. How much access do you get? I never worry about that. If we don't have the culture built into our company that breeds the loyalty for the clients, where somebody's going to be able to take 50 or 100 when they leave, then we failed as a company to begin with.
Exactly. Totally agree, Fred. Well said.
Julie, anything you want to say or add, or that I could have included and didn't?
On the IT stuff, no. I think there's so many solutions out there for so many different problems. Like really evaluating, finding the right one for your team is the thing that I will just say is important, because there's so many options.
Cool. Amanda, anything?
No, they've all taken the words right out of my mouth.
Okay. Ryan, anything technology?
I mean, one of the hardest things being that it's just me and one off-site employee is making sure I'm not paying for the same application or features in different pieces of software. So looking at, I use Zoho as my CRM, really trying to evaluate and utilize everything that Zoho has. So I'm not then paying for Slack or some other subscription plan where I have it already. I'm just not utilizing it. So, paying for Asana, like Zoho has it or Microsoft Outlook has it. So thinking about things that way from an IT perspective.
Ryan, but with Zoho, don't you have to build that yourself or no?
Well, they have the various models, right? So if you're using the CRM system, they have a task list. They have the projects application, which you have to go in and tweak. But they also have, I don't pay for Zoom because they have a meeting feature. They have, I'm incorporating their bookings feature because they now have an online scheduler. So trying to figure out and utilize all of the things that they're already giving me so I can lose some of these other expenses.
Mm-hmm.
The building part of that, Ryan, you can build it on the fly too, right? If I need to add something, I need to add a type of task, I can do that after I'm up and running?
Absolutely.
Okay, very good. All right, so I want to move into talking about employees and independent contractors. How are we classifying these workers? I think we can suffice it to say if you hire a non-US, and Beth will correct me if I have this wrong, but if I hire a non-US person outside the United States, they are likely not an employee by definition, right?
Yep.
So if I'm hiring an Indian, a Filipino, or through an agency, they're not an employee. You're protected, not really an issue.
Well, you've got to be careful, John, because you have to cover the employment laws in whatever country that they're originating in. I run Canadian payroll. Like I have contractors and employees in the US and Canada. Mm-hmm. My Canadian employees, you bet I run Canadian payroll.
Well, you also have physical, yes, okay, but you have,
right? So, but for US law, you're correct. Anybody who works for me in Canada, they're not a US employee because they're Canadian employees.
Right.
You have to look at the employment law they fall under.
Yeah, correct. So if an admin person should be, an admin direct hire should be an employee in their country, you have to consider whether you need to make them an employee. And then you also run into the other issues of whether you have physical presence in that country beyond the scope of today.
Generally, though, the admins aren't going to create a physical nexus for tax purposes. Your preparers will.
Yep, correct. So you're not filing a tax return in India, are you?
No.
Oh, all right.
Contractor. It's contractor.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. No, employees create nexus. Okay, got it. So you have a mix, Beth, since you opened your mouth first. I don't have to pick on you. So you have a mix of employees and contractors, right? But all right. What dictates the difference?
Their position within the company.
Okay.
So AJ, who is my number 2, absolutely, she's an employee. My admins, all employees. My tax preparers, all contractors.
And they have some sort of payment system based on production?
Correct.
Okay.
I pay them commission based on the invoice that they produce. That way, somebody who writes very quickly is not treated unfairly or making less per hour than somebody who's a very slow writer. And it controls my cost. So I don't go hourly on these. If they're doing rep work for me, the rep work I pay hourly for. But there's only a couple of people in the company that I have to do rep work. I have to really trust them.
Oh, interesting. Fred, what are you doing? You've got a mixture as well?
We do. All of our brick and mortar people are employees. Okay. Most of our tax prep people are contractors. Ellie is now doing a lot more besides tax prep. She's doing social media marketing. She didn't get into that. So she's been migrated over to an employee as well. And we have had remoters before who want to be employees. If they wanted to be employees, we don't have a problem with that, but we will look at each state that we have the contractor in to make sure that we are doing the contractor status properly. So we don't really care which way they want to be. The commission rate is still going to be the same. Like Beth says, when you're paying a set amount based on the tax return price, you know your costs, you know what it's going to be. And I've had people, we're paying them more than if they were in-house. If I have somebody in-house working, they're making less money than my remoters are. My average remoter is going to make anywhere from, if you're slow and not very smart, even with it, you're still learning, not smart, but inexperienced. You're going to start off making anywhere between $35 to over $100 an hour. I've had some remoters make.
Ouch. Interesting. Amanda, everybody, no employees, right? Everybody's independent?
No, all my offshore people are both contractors, but everybody that's US based is employees.
Okay. Interesting. Good. Ryan, right now you're the only US person.
Right now I am the only US person.
Okay, so there we go. But you did have a writer though who worked in Hoboken for you in the office.
Correct.
Obviously he was an employee.
He was an employee. New Jersey has some very strict laws on contractors versus employees. And it just made sense if this individual is going to come to the office to have him as an employee.
So for my 2 cents, I've had employees in Washington, Colorado, New York, obviously, and now Pennsylvania. And in all cases, even though they're remote, we qualify there. We make them an employee. I have enough headaches in my life. I don't need any more. So we just made everyone an employee and move forward. And we're actually just about on time. Everybody's on a contract. Your workers are all on contracts. Beth, yes. Fred, yes. No. They're on the. Not going to see a Fred contract.
When you say on a contract, explain what you're saying on a contract.
Well, is there a written agreement between you and the person doing work for you?
Well, not a formal, and we want to evaluate that and bring that more formal. We have non-competes and other things they sign, confidentiality agreements, but no specific contract. But my tax research in the past few months have deemed that it's probably better to have that for certain reasons, but we don't.
Got it. Okay.
And based on the conversation I heard between you and Portia earlier, we may migrate everybody to employees anyhow. Spoiler alert.
Oh, so just as a last thing, because we're just about on time. Beth, can your workers have their own clients outside of working with you?
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons that they can be contractors, is we don't restrict that. We just expect, like Fred said, if you take a client, we expect you to get the client done in a reasonable amount of time. And so, we have some people, they're very busy around the deadlines because they maintain their own US practice. But then we get them, lots and lots of hours during the off season or off season from regular taxes, right? So no, they can absolutely. Then if they've left another employer where they have a non-compete and they're restricted from, preparing clients for a while, but client wants to follow them, they have to come in through our regular system. They can't come directly in. They have to come through the regular appointment system and intake.
Very good. Ryan, when you had an employee, even though he was in an office, he was on a contract, you had an agreement?
Yeah, there was an agreement, and he didn't have any of his own clients. He actually said to me, and this was great, he goes, I don't want to talk to anybody. So I don't want a phone on my desk. I don't want to email. I'm going to just basically, you talk to the clients, I'll do the work.
Put me in the back in the corner.
John, we actually have a program for our contractors because many of them have their own businesses. They have the ability to do their client work through our UltraTax. It's still theirs, but they have to run through all of our office procedures as well. And of course, we take a small piece of that, but they get to keep that if they wish.
Too much bookkeeping. Too much bookkeeping.
I have admin.
we have a very generous friends and family, and if they have, if they have need of some of our very specialized software, as long as they ask me first, I don't care.
Yeah.
Just ask me first. Just don't care.
We don't have a lot.
They did all their work through the office, and we knew what was going on. Then they didn't.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to move. I thank all of you, including Amanda, who disappeared early on me, for popping on. Fred, Julie, Beth, Ryan, there's Amanda. Did I miss anyone else who was on with us? Thank you all. If you want to contact any of these folks, there is a handout in the handouts tab that has their bio and their information. And some of these conversations could have been an hour on their own. So I really appreciate that everybody came on today. Thank you again. And Portia, where are you? There's Portia. Hello, Portia.
Hi.
How are you today?
I'm doing great. I love all the ideas and the extra information. It's going to be a little distracting with that going around in my head and then to just kind of shift gears, but we'll see how we can do here.
Anyway, so Portia Vogt is an enrolled agent in Minnesota, and to me, she is a subject matter expert on 7216 and Graham-Leach-Bliley issues. Someone else made the comment the other day that she will scare you. That is not her intent, but I did think that these were some important issues, and she agreed to come on. So Portia, go ahead, all you.
Oh, great. Okay, so yeah, not intended, this presentation isn't intended to be legal advice. It's not intended to set off a nuclear bomb. It is just intended to cover what the words actually say in some of these acts and take them at face value as you try to figure out how you're going to get your practice to strive for whoever wrote these things in reality. So one of the first tests I like to give people is I like to ask them, what is tax return information? And I'm going to go back, and I wonder for those of you who have a piece of paper, if you could write your definition of what you think tax return information is that you're supposed to be protecting. And it needs to be like 6 words or less. Maybe you do it in your head. Okay, now that was awfully short to give you a chance to do that. But I want to show you what 7216 is. And I like asking people this question when I interview them as a potential worker, if they have held themselves out to be a tax preparer. Obviously, we hire people who haven't prepared taxes and put them into administrative or bookkeeping rules. So maybe I wouldn't give them as hard of a time, but I try to get people laughing while looking at these topics. So 7216 says tax return information is any information, ready, including your taxpayer's name, including their address, obviously their identifying number. That's what we usually think of. Any information that's furnished in any form or matter in connection with the preparation of a tax return for the client. It also includes the statistical compilations of the tax return, even in a form that cannot be associated with or otherwise identifying them correctly, specifically. So the term tax return information is very, very broad when we talk about what you're supposed to be protecting and have procedures under 7216 about. That usually is the start of the mind-blowing, when we start thinking about everywhere our client's name is. The Graham-Leach-Bliley Act is something that we are all subject to. And it also has a lot of privacy and safeguard rules. Much of 7216 is based on the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act. And if any of you, I know some of you are Stagecoach, AKA Wells Fargo lovers, and many of you are Wells Fargo haters, but they are a prime example of an entity that got caught and now does everything internally and takes the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act almost to the extreme where you can't get anything done anymore because their security is very, very tight. So why do we have these rules about our workers? And realize that remote workers, as we talked about, can be offshore or right here down the road. And the reason we have these kind of rules is because, believe it or not, the #1 loss of information has to do with human beings and the fact that they have issues. Mental illness, employee retaliation, that's one that we saw one time here in our practice, and obviously drug abuse. But even when you hire, you're doing your background checks. These are tough things to check for under HIPAA. Even political motives can come into play. So Beth did a good job of talking about how she does screening and background searches. We do background on all of our employees, which includes making them give us an 8821 so that we can see have they filed and what's their filing history. You maybe don't feel like you need to do that. It's just something we've done because we had a valued worker who had made great contributions. Come to find out, her husband had had her sign returns but never filed them, and we had to let her go. So let's do another test now that we know what tax return information is. And I'm guessing most of you would get this one okay. So your client Camilla called you, John, and I'm with Edina Realty and I'm trying to help her buy a house. So Camilla says that you can help me by giving me some information about what she might qualify for on a loan. What are you going to say to me?
Well,
sorry, Camilla. Camilla says you're her tax person.
I can help you, but I can't. We can't talk about Kamala.
Right. So most of us would even confirm or deny whether or not someone is a client, and that's our normal wording here. I'm sorry, I can't really confirm or deny whether or not we have a client named Kamala. But if she is a client, she can certainly call me, or she can go to our website and download a release form. And then we can talk to whoever she gives us permission to talk to. And I'm guessing most of your staff, I'm guessing most of you on the call, definitely would pass this test to some extent, whether it be a law office, whether or not it would be a payroll person, even the IRS knocking on the door. Most of us recognize that absent of some sort of official writ, they can't really get you to hand over things immediately, just on a verbal. So I'm feeling like most of you can probably pass this, but I'm feeling like most of you would fail this. So hi, John. I'm from one of the tech giants or a unicorn company, and I'm here to help you build your practice with remote workers. Please just share your client names, and we'll solve all your business problems. I'm Trello. I can make your workflow go easier. I'm Team Outpost. I'm Mango Voice. I'm Loop Phone. I'm Phone.com. I'm Salesforce.com or LastPass, Qbox, or Zoho. Would you please just give me your clients' names and I'll help you do great things. I'm Microsoft. I'd like you to use Excel and Word. It's really easy. Just load me on your computer and go. You don't have anything to say?
Oh, me? So let's talk about something a little bit broader, right?
Yeah.
On the broader standpoint, I text my clients. They all want to be texts. They give me their cell phone number. However, they haven't opted in. That's a problem.
It is.
I email people. Now they gave me their email address. They want me to email them. The tax law changed. Something else happened. They want to get emailed from Drake that in fact their tax return was accepted because Drake's software does that. But they really need to opt into that. I can't just unilaterally, as you're saying, load their data in and send it. And the answer is most of us probably do that. But
right. So most of us do that. And there are a few things that are exceptions. And if we have time at the back end, I'll talk about what you can do without permission or written consent from your client as far as auxiliary software, apps, and your devices. But I'm going to try to focus on the don'ts, because for most of us, if we can focus on the don't do list, we're going to stay away from those penalties and fines or being that practice that ends up getting pulled over. I'm one of those people, when I drive on the freeway, other people can be driving at 70. I'll be at 65. I'm the one that gets pulled over. It's my deal. I noticed too Marissa's comment, and having it in your engagement, if your engagement doesn't have the right size text, if it doesn't have some of the required wording under 7216, and I've uploaded some of that into our supplements. In the I don't like to play the consent audit 7216 lottery. Your engagement letter might be missing the things that are required. And in this particular conversation, I don't have time to go through those, but I just want to draw everyone's attention to how easily we do it here, but we wouldn't do it here. And your remote workers probably can be trained to not do it here, but it's a little tougher when you guys aren't leading by example and haven't even realized that there's a problem here under 7216 and the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act. So high level, the important thing is you need to have affirmative consent, and you need to have it on the right pieces of paper or the right electronic form. And I've put the IRS procedure, one of them that we have relied upon in designing our consent forms. And there's another act, the CAN-SPAM Act, which we won't go into in great depth again, but I have noted that one of the favorite softwares that I often see people use is the Intuit QBO. When you set up a client in there, unless you know where to navigate to it, Intuit is one of the worst offenders. They grab your client's name and their email and start marketing and tracking them under their huge database of information right from the get-go. And under the Gramm-Leach-Bliley, you are still responsible. Even if you hire another company to handle your business, you can't contract away your legal responsibility to comply with the law. Each separate email in violation of the CAN-SPAM Act can be subject to a $16,000 fine. So this is an act that I know that, John, you haven't heard me really talk a lot about, but it is one that I've started to see the teeth are a little bit stronger, and there seems to be a little bit more push for compliance because so many of us are irritated by all the spam that we're getting.
Can I add one thing here? So
yeah,
some of you that have taken a lot of webinars with us on Big Marker, because Big Marker can send emails, they don't, right? All the emails we generally send come out through MailChimp, but because they can send some emails, they've adopted the belief that they are in fact subject to CAN-SPAM. So there are folks that have gotten some sort of junk or some sort of email they didn't like from Big Marker, and they said, I don't want to be contacted by you anymore. And without us knowing it, we send out your confirmation to the email, and you are on Big Marker's do not email list, and we can't send it to you. So once we figure out who some of these people are, you have to contact them with a letter and ask to please be reinstated, that you understand you're going to get email from them again. It's amazing what someone who's complying with it, what kind of problem they can cause. But anyway, for
yeah,
people.
On December 15th, just a few days ago, a $550,000 fine was given to Twitter by the European Enforcement Agency. The European rules about affirmative written consent and allowing people to control their name and their email address came out about 5 years ahead of the US ones. They're better drafted and they are being enforced. And so I bring this up so that all of you can be ahead of the curve here, because it's just a matter of time until we're going to see that. And please bear in mind that doing these kind of webinars is a different type of business than a financial company. Financial companies are subject to the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, all of them. All of them, all of them, all of them. So we have different and more rigid rules than your hairdresser or than Tax Practice Pro. The minute you walk into the financial industries, there are some high bars to be operating under. So don't get confused just because the barber down the street doesn't have to do this. And some of your remote workers that you are hiring have not worked in a financial industry, or they've worked for another tax office that's populated by dinosaurs, and I say that in the kindest way, and they really don't know. So another concept that my IT person, who happens to have 2 PhDs and also be my husband, constantly hammers us over the head is security or usability. And so there's always this loss of security the more convenient something is. And of course, it can get to the point where you can't even run your firm. But keep this concept in mind as you go about in doing your security. It's very helpful. And most of the breaches you have, it's usually because, well, I just couldn't get that project done. Or you chose convenience of, hey, Zoho's great, I'll just connect it, and I'll worry about getting a consent form later, type of thing. Test number 4 with your remote workers is Trust but Verify. I'm a Trust but Verify tax professional. I know my clients tell me all sorts of things, and then I'll ask them again a second way. Or, of course, I'll ask them for the actual documents. I never use my personal credit card. I never use my S-Corp card for personal stuff. That's fine. I need to see the bank statements. That's fine. I need to download that bank data. Oh, by the way, did you realize you put that $700 set of tires on your S-Corp card? So the same with the 4557. And I'm assuming that you've heard about the 4557. I'm assuming you've actually printed it out. I'm assuming you've actually gone through your entire practice. I'm assuming with your workers, you go through this at least annually. It is very much a moving target. My 4557 from last year, we have had 3 security meetings because with the addition of COVID and all of its impact, we had to update our security procedures and the boxes that we marked on the 4557. So I'd love for all of you to make a commitment to go through the 4557 at least once a year. And those of you that are using Drake software, of course, you get prompted to acknowledge that you are required to use this or something basically similar to that. And then if you're going to work with contractors, great test. Say, would you upload your 4557 for your firm? If they get mad at you, it's like when my clients hire a contractor and they say, hey, I need that W-9 form from you. I know I might not pay you $600 this year, but our policy is we get it from everybody.
Portia, this is a best practice or a requirement?
I believe that the 4557 is a requirement for the ERO.
Yes, but for me to get it from my contractors as an ERO, do you think this is a requirement or just a best practice?
If you read the ERO manual and you're the one that's actually transmitting those returns, I would say that if they materially participated in that return, I think it's a requirement.
Thank you.
I do think there's a little bit of a facts and circumstances as far as what scope of duties that contractor might be doing. Like, for instance, are they someone that's just cleaning your office? But yeah. And again, with our clients, they get this big thing like, well, who do I give a 1099 to and who don't? And I can save them hours and hours and increase their safety by just saying, get a W-9 from everybody. We send a 1099 to everybody, whether it's $10 or $6. 1,000. So for me, going through the 4557 is we just do it. If they're going to be touching our tax information, and again, I've adopted the definition of tax return information of including even the name of the taxpayer, even the email of the taxpayer. So I just don't fight it. I just do it. It's kind of like Nike. Just do it. So I'm going to assume while I was talking, a lot of you might have been reading. But I want you to understand the word auxiliary services. There's two categories. There's your tax software that you can send returns from. That software, you don't need consent. Pretty much everything else is an auxiliary service. And you probably need to look at getting written consent to put your tax return information in it. So test number 5, we've been talking about a lot. And that is, are they 100% in the US? Are they partially in the US? Sometimes they're not. Or are they, outside the US? Basically, in the eyes of 7216, if they're in the US 100% of the time, the bar is a lot lower. If they are outside the US, you have an issue. Your issue is before you can even use them, each individual client needs to give written consent ahead of time. Ahead of time. Ahead of time. So now we have another problem. You're using auxiliary software. Do we think that every worker for the auxiliary software of LoopPhone, Mango, Team Outpost, Trello, Slack, LastPass, Qbox, and Zoho are 100% in the US? And how are you going to figure that out? And even if they are today, will they be tomorrow? So again, in our effort to actually be able to run our practice, we've done an inventory of all our software. We put it on a list. Every single one of our things listed there, and our clients, before we start, they mark yes, 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 because 7216 says we can't do a select all. So they have to do them each individually. You have to disclose where your auxiliary software is. And of course, if you're using staff outside the US, that has to be disclosed to them before you start going down that road.
So Portia, real quick, if I use a contractor to do a client tax return for me, I need a 7216 from the client?
Yes.
Right? Because that contractor is not part of my firm because they're not an employee.
I am unaware of any exception that would possibly apply to that situation. In my supplements, please take the time to read them yourselves. They give a number of examples that are actually very clear. And then I also have an article from a law firm where they did a presentation on these topics under 7216, and they got the same questions I get. They're the same normal questions you're asking, John. So I really, really believe that you don't have the time to go through, well, maybe Salesforce is okay, but LoopPhone isn't. You don't have the time for that. Just get the 7216, design a consent form, get it now, and start doing it every single year, because your software is going to change every single year, which is what happens. We have a consent form and they have to update. And I know that for Beth, she mentioned how affordable it is to use contractors overseas as well as some of the others. And I love that. It is super, super attractive, awesome, great. And you might think to yourself, is it Amanda who's in Idaho?
Yes. No, Amanda's in Colorado. Julie's in Idaho.
Julie's in Idaho. She's got all her people in Idaho. Well, they might travel. And so you need to think about, and by the way, this was me. I thought my firm was completely here, here, here. And then I went and traveled to Mexico and I brought my laptop with me. I went and traveled to Costa Rica and I did a little work there. So I hadn't really thought about those types of scenarios, but you may want to discuss, especially with your workers, are they jet setting? And do you need to implement a policy about that as well? We know that our clients this year, we're going to have to ask them, even our W-2 clients, where were you working? Because some of them that here in Minnesota decided to go to Wisconsin to their cabins, and they were there beyond the nexus rules. And so that is true with whoever your workers are. Are they always in the US as far as 7216? Or do you have some other issues or policies you want to put in place because of the rules about being outside the US when they're working? And one more time, I know you don't like hearing it for some of you, the taxpayer's consent is obtained ahead of time if they're outside the US and its territories. And it has to be written consent. You have to let your client know that someone outside the US is touching that return information, and that includes their name. Test number 6 is actually kind of a fun one. I've had a lot of fun with this with my remote workers, and that has to do with their physical security. Let's see if the next slide is what I thought. Yep, here's Bailey's office. So each of my remote workers need to send me pictures. They need to show me how they're locking up stuff so that when they're not with it. And so I can kind of assess that thing. Can they lock the room? What does the lock look like? What is their procedure? And we put that into their file folder, because if you're going to have remote workers, every single one of them has a different office layout. So you might want to think about adding something similar. It's crazy. Bailey was fantastic because she's been working for the banking industry, and so she knew all the things to do ahead of time. But most of my other workers, they've never even thought about these types of things. And then what about prying knives? When you have remote workers, they may have a cleaner. They might have their, girlfriend or boyfriend. They might have their roommate. They may have their other family members that are there temporarily or permanently. And have you navigated those issues as part of your physical security plan with your remote worker, because they just don't think about it. And it's something you maybe haven't thought of before. This year, the only security risk that I had, let's see if I can show you, is my friend Felix. I left a glass of water, 2 of them actually, on my desk. And my kitty friend got up on my desk and tipped both of them over on my computer. So when you're working with remote workers and security, there may be some other things that you need to think about as far as physical security or even day-to-day habits that could cause, maybe not a security breach, but certainly cause havoc in your practice, since we're on the topic of remote locations. Test number 6, are you willing to lead by example? Many of you on today's call, when you were talking about your procedures, talked about separate profiles and logins, and those are the kinds of things that are necessary to have remote workers and to be compliant with Graham-Leach-Bliley and 7216 and some of the other rules. It can be hard. I know that as the business owner, I often get really busy and I can be a worse offender. So I reward my staff if they catch me breaking my own policy and vice versa. So that's another fun game that we often play throughout the week and or at meetings. And I liked that thing about the weekly meetings that we talked about. But it's exhausting thinking about all those different things that you have to do.
Hey, Portia,
yeah.
We're 10 minutes over, so I'm going to have to.
Okay, so let's just go ahead and cut it there. And yeah.
Where can we find you? Whoops. Did you give me your email here? No.
I did not put it on.
There is a bio in the bio handout, and we can happily email her. And I've had a couple of requests in messages, Portia. So I know we talked about maybe doing the 2-hour version of this. Let's float it and see if we get enough folks that want to do it and schedule it.
Yes, I really appreciate you inviting us on.
I love that you come on. Thank you.
You bet.
All right. Our last panel. Where are our folks, our employees that are popping on with us? I know they're coming. They're somewhere. I know I have Ellie, Trisha, Donder and Blitzen and Lisa and Comet and Cupid. Here comes Lisa.
I'm here.
And Trisha.
Hi, Trisha.
Lisa, tell everybody who you are and where you're from and who you work for.
My name's Lisa Boucher. Out in Massachusetts, outside of Boston. I work for Beth Logan and American Expat Taxes. I've been working with Beth for about a year now. I used to work with Trisha at Greenback Taxes. We go way back.
Lisa, I think you might be muted. I mean, you're not muted, but I can't hear you.
I can hear you.
I can hear her. I can hear Lisa. Poor Trisha's microphone. Poor Trisha's earpiece might be failing her.
Yeah. But yeah, so I've been working remotely now since 2013, doing all international since 2014. So I also have my own book of clients too that I handle.
We talked about you and those things when we were on.
Yeah.
Hello, Ellie. Who are you? What do you do? Where are you from?
I live in Ohio, but I'm not from here. I'm an enrolled agent. I work for Fred Stein, who you guys saw earlier on the panel. I am his minion.
Ellie also used to work for a family firm in traditional retail. And
I'll also do bookkeeping for another bookkeeper for another EA, and I've done some stuff for you, John.
That's true. And you speak for us here and there. And Trisha has disappeared. Trisha works for me currently, and she used to work at Greenback, and I think she also worked at Samaritan. So she has a bunch of, and she also worked at a family firm. So she has a lot of international experience as well. So hopefully she's going to pop back on with us.
Trisha is one of the smartest people I know.
Aw, that's really
Good
kind
thing
of you,
she
Lisa,
didn't
because
hear
I was going
that.
to say the exact same things from you. Lisa and I have actually followed each other around for a lot of the last several years, actually.
Quite a few years now.
Oh.
Yeah, we kept on following each other around. We were at Greenback at the same time. We left Greenback shortly after each other.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were both at Stightly and Carstetter for a
Yep.
while, and then we were both at Tax Samaritan for a while, and
Then we diverged.
and then we diverged, and then we diverged like two roads in the wood. But yeah, we tend to we've been following each other around. Kind of interesting.
So let me ask you guys a couple of different things, and then you can comment. What I'm really looking to understand, and I want everyone here, almost everyone that's on this webinar owns a firm, right? They're on it because they're looking to add remote employees or add more remote employees. So it's neat for them to understand the culture of what you already have and what you expect out of this. So the first thing is you're all using your own equipment. You're using employer equipment.
I use my own equipment.
Right. And I know
everybody I do work for is usually remote desktop, you remote in.
Mm-hmm.
I use my own equipment because, like I said, I have my own book of clients.
Right.
So I'm also running my own firm.
Trisha, what about you? Oh, she's still having some audio problems. Ellie, what do you?
I use my own computer, but BQ has provided me with one of their VoIP phones so that I can call clients if need to.
Interesting. So you have a house phone, if you will.
Yeah.
Oh, Trisha.
John, I can't hear you. I'm going to try to refresh this again.
Okay.
I'm not sure what's causing it. Weird.
Could be a Mac, could be wireless. So what's the work culture like? I mean, do you both prefer working remotely?
I will never work in a brick and mortar office again after working remote for so long. I've been working remote for 7 years.
Okay.
I don't think I could. When COVID happened and everyone went remote, I had to laugh because they're all like, "Oh, I have to set up a home office. I have 2 monitors." I'm like, "Yeah, I have 4." And now I have a 49-inch monitor. I mean,
there's a whole subculture of folks out there who do remote tax work, right? All right. And like,
yeah, we're a little different.
Tax people are different, Lisa.
Yeah.
Ellie,
Nice.
you like remoting? You don't like remoting?
I like remoting. What's been nice about my experience with BQ is that I had the opportunity to fly into the New York office a couple times during tax season. So I get to be in an office like 2 to 3 weeks out of the year. They had a really nice Airbnb for us to hang out at. And I got to go into the office, which was great because I got to meet a lot of the people that I was speaking with and interacting with on our inter-office messaging system. And sort of improve co-working relationships.
Very interesting.
Develop co-working relationships would be a better verb.
And Ellie's true calling is being a librarian. So this is probably working by herself at home is probably not much of an extension beyond working in the stacks.
I see the stacks of books in your background.
I actually spent most of my time as an instruction librarian. So I taught a lot when I was a librarian.
All right.
Kids, a lot of times who were, Googling or whatever kids do, Facebooking, Twittering.
So clients.
You guys all talk to clients?
I do, yes.
Mm-hmm. Trisha, you will be. Ellie, you speak to clients?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yep.
We know Lisa does some side work, has some things on her own side. Ellie, do you even have time to do anything?
No.
Fred,
I also have my kid at home who's very little and takes a lot of energy and time and stuff like that.
Okay, but you could, if you wanted, you could do more.
Yes, but I am Fred's minion. Yeah. I am owned. I sold my soul. I think it's on a piece of paper somewhere in the Cobble Skill office.
Trisha, have you in your history, have you been able to do additional work, or have you been limited to who you work for?
Well, I mean, you were my side work for a good chunk of the last couple months.
Great, I'm side work. That's great.
Start off as side work and then grew to be main work, right?
Right, and it grew into main work.
I've always had my mother's obligation, like family obligation work that I do and get paid practically nothing for. And then, I mean, I took a couple years off from working. And during that couple years off from working, I guess there were a few clients who bought out my non-compete from Greenback when I left them. And I wasn't intending really to do any work during those couple years, but they didn't ask me for it. I didn't ask them for that. And when I found out that they'd already done that, I wasn't exactly in a position to say, well, you've bought out my non-compete. Now I'm not going to do any work for you. So it was a handful of them that I suppose they were side work when I wasn't working. But I suppose since I wasn't working, they almost became my main work.
Got it. What, any of you have your own insurance, your own errors and omissions insurance?
I do.
Okay.
Carried it for a while, yeah.
We have a practice too, Lisa, so you're doing both. Okay.
But when I was at Greenback, we were actually required to have it.
Sure.
We have our own.
Okay.
We had to have a certain amount of it, but
yeah.
I think we haven't discussed the employee versus independent contractor issue quite yet, but not to speak ill of a foreign business association of both mine and Lisa's, and the Greenback diaspora runs very, very wide, I think, but there is a line where the employee independent contractor thing gets blurred, and
yes,
I would say they blurred it in not the correct way.
Yeah.
It's some industries, when you're workers like we are, it's interesting that, it's not like you're bringing me on to do 1 or 2 projects. When you have that ongoing consistent relationship, the line by its very nature gets blurred. Even if you really are that contractor, it blurs. There's no way it.
Right.
This was more than just a little blurred. This was to the point where you were telling them.
Yeah, Lisa and I were management for a while. I think I was probably management for a bit longer than you were, but
yeah, we both left after we became management.
Management doesn't tend to stay very long.
Yeah.
At least not like tax practice management. The marketing people stay a lot longer, but it's when you're talking about everybody has a domain email address, everyone's required to have a certain like letterhead and signature and all that stuff. If we're talking about classic issues of control, they're providing the software, they're saying, like you must use this tracking system. I don't frankly know how they can make the argument for contract basis. And I remember when I was negotiating my contract, kind of going into management, that was one of the things I discussed with them was, like, why are we still doing this? And they ultimately said the real reason was workers' comp, because they didn't want to have to pay workers' comp for everybody that was working all over the place. Because and maybe that's another thing that gets into the working from home situation is, if I were to trip over my kid's, like toy or something and fall flat on my face and break my hip, I guess I'd either do one or the other. I guess it's hard to do both at the same time. But let's say I were to trip over a kid's toy and break my hip. Technically, isn't that a workplace injury?
Well, my concern, just as the only employer on here, the reason I put everyone on as an employee is my concern. 3 concerns are disability, workers' comp, unemployment. And I don't mean, I'm going to get screwed by somebody who puts in a bogus complaint. I mean, we had a pandemic. What if we had no work? What if you did fall down? What if you fell down going to get the mail because I FedExed you something? I mean, plug in something for real goes bad. Mm-hmm. How do you get out of it and what do you do, right? I can't make you whole for that, So that's always something you should plug into these considerations. Of course, too, I can't control the fact that you didn't keep your work area clean. Now, can I? Because you're an independent contractor. But
hopefully you're hiring people who are honest and not going to, trip over something that shouldn't have been there in their workplace and then blame you.
Well, this is also beyond, though, that, right, Lisa? I mean, somebody legitimately gets hurt, legitimately has a comp claim, legitimately needs disability. New York has family medical leave now, right? So if you're not an employee, you're not paid for that. What if somebody needed 6 months off for a legitimate claim and I didn't cover them, right? I mean, I think I opened myself up for a lot of nonsense, but.
Beth just put up that she carries workers' comp and E&O on all of her contractors and employees.
There is a way. So the E&O, depending on your carrier, does cover contractors.
Yep.
But you want to ask that question. That's also why I wanted to bring somebody from an insurance company on here. The other answer is that the other statement is that, with the exception of New York and maybe California, you can buy one workers' comp policy that covers every state. And you just give them the payroll by state and they charge the appropriate rate. New York has higher capital requirements, and quite honestly, California is California. But anyway, I mean, these are not insurmountable things to do, right? So, and Kathleen is commenting that unless I provide a certificate, I have to pay for the workers' comp. And Kathleen, that's the point, right? Beth is saying she's paying it. Honestly, it's like 10 in New York, which is a terrible state. It's 10 cents per 100 of payroll. I just bought a policy in Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, my expense constant is $500 and the premium is $10. All right. So comp is based on the anticipated payroll. Comp is inexpensive for office worker exposures. It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like we're roofers. I mean,
no. It's
Roofers, livery drivers. No, it's outrageous. Why? Because they have claims that are legitimate. So what do you guys worry about as remote employees? You can't tell me you worry about a global pandemic because we already got that. Ellie, what do you worry about as a remote worker?
I guess I worry about a couple of things, since I am a contractor, there's no real obligation. So if work dries up or things change, I'll have to constantly be scrambling to make sure that I have cash flow coming in, always looking for other projects and ideas.
Mhm.
And I guess the other thing I worry about is I like being part of a team and, really working towards making a difference and helping people. Am I developing relationships with my coworkers to do that? Am I part of a team? Am I just someone who's here doing paperwork that nobody else wants to do? Am I presenting like the BQ brand to our clients in a way that makes them feel like they are welcomed and safe with this organization?
Wow. I do know you have a hard stop, so when you need to go, we'll say goodbye. But that's why I wanted to ask you first. Lisa, what do you worry about? I mean, I know you've got both your own book and the contract work. But what do you worry
my
about?
biggest worry is power outages.
Oh.
That one too, because we get tornadoes here in Ohio.
Let's put it this way. 9 o'clock last night, I was getting the generator ready because we got a foot of snow last night. And just in case power went out, I needed to have the generator up and going so I could have my computer running and internet and everything. That's my biggest worry because I was working remotely for someone and had power outages, and it was a terrible year. I had like 3 power outages during tax season. And by the third one, they'll go, "Oh, you had this same excuse before." I'm like, "Well, I'm sorry. I have no power. I have no internet."
Take a screenshot of your utility company's website, right?
Because I'm in Massachusetts, I cannot use my cell phone as a hotspot and do a tax return.
I was just going to ask you if you did that. Why can't you?
Massachusetts has some very strict laws on protecting your client information. And one of the things is you have to be on a very secure, if you're on a wireless network, it has to be very secure. So I don't think the cell phone is that secure enough to be doing a tax return. That's me. I can't go into Panera Bread or the library and use their Wi-Fi.
Oh God, I hope no one of us
I hope no one does that, right?
I've seen people. I have seen people sitting in a Panera doing tax returns, and you see it on the various on LinkedIn and Facebook and the various groups. People talk, "Oh yeah, I just go to Panera or I go to a Starbucks and I do tax returns on the free Wi-Fi," and it's like, oh, that's so dangerous.
I wouldn't even want to hold a piece of paper with someone's social security number on it inside one of those places because you never know who's seeing it. Right.
Yeah, it's crazy. But then again, if you go into those groups, I mean, those of us, especially who are remote workers, who are EAs or doing high-end returns or working for big firms, working for firms throughout the country, we're not like a lot of the other people you see that are doing returns that are just opening practices with no credentials. And they don't realize all the rules you have to follow.
No, we have our EA inferiority complex. Does that kind of follow all the really
Well, it doesn't help that every time you go to apply for a job, if you're an EA, all you can be is a tax preparer. They will not let you be management if you're not a CPA.
That's not true. Some of the bigger firms are starting to loosen up on that.
A little bit here and there, but they still want you to get your CPA. I worked for a CPA firm. I worked for a mid-sized regional firm. We had clients all over the country.
I worked at Weiser 15 years ago. They let me be a manager as an enrolled agent, which I thought was very nice.
They wouldn't even let me be a supervisor.
What's interesting, in 2008, New York law changed. So just back to your CPA comment, New York, they will let tax work count as that 2 years of work you have to do and get a sign off. You don't have to do an audit anymore. You can just, so there's really no.
I have all my hours in. I have my education. I've actually taken the exam. I just decided not to take it again. It was too much work.
Move to New York. Anyway. So, boy. All right. So what's your biggest concern, Trish?
I mean, the biggest one for me, honestly, is work-life balance, because I tend to be a workaholic to begin with. Like I'll be one of those people where I have chronic insomnia. So I'll wake up at 3 a.m. and be like, geez, I don't really know what else to do. I may as well do work.
I've gotten your messages and texts at the middle of the night, so I can attest to that.
That's and useful when we work international, because it means that, like half of our clients are dealing with that sort of time difference anyway. So they're kind of like, whoa, this is kind of cool. It's
Yes, I don't know about that. I would always make it clear to somebody, oh, I managed my sleep schedule so I could talk to you in real time to get through this. I don't know that I would want them to think I was up at 3 a.m. Every morning.
I mean, it's in some ways it can be nice, but it's tempting to let it slide that way. And so the 3 a.m. that I wake up because I can't sleep and I just have no idea why I woke up becomes the 3 a.m. that I wake up because I feel I have to, and I'm a workaholic. And then just kind of, the problem with working from home has always been that you never leave work.
Yeah.
I think that's been a classic thing. And, you always have, I mean, you have a separate office, you have a separate whatever. It doesn't matter. It's still, you never really leave work. And so that work-life balance becomes a really big thing to try to shift. And I mean, there's that, and then there's also with the pandemic and stuff, like I think everyone's used to being isolated now. But before the pandemic started, there was one thing that, like, you don't get water cooler talk and things like that. And so it's kind of hard. When Lisa and I were first at Greenback, like in the days when it was fun, right? We had those, I mean, Beth was talking about how y'all have like
exactly team meetings.
We used to have those.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a way to connect everybody. And that was one of those things that got lost and
yes.
as along the way. And that's one of those things that, like, I really realized it's hard to. It's one thing to just do the work and collaborate on the work, but there is something to be said about just the human interaction too. Like, oh gosh, that football team, God, they were horrible, weren't they?
Yeah.
So you think from a cultural standpoint, someone that's going to be bringing on remote workers should do something, even if it's virtual happy hour or team meetings, office meetings. You should create that level of inclusion.
Just a chat program where you can talk about things other than work.
Yeah.
You can find out who likes the same TV shows as you, who likes, even better, who likes your rival football team.
Yes.
So you could go, pick on a Beth and I. Beth is a Buffalo Bills fan. I, of course, am a Patriots fan. So we go back and forth. Things like that.
Lisa, you'll remember Ross, of course. Ross,
yes.
I used to always keep a Skype window up, and we'd share random puns and jokes across. And then we also had this dorky thing where we both watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So we catch up on and because he's in the Dominican Republic, he was always a little bit behind on that. And so it was all of those, one of those things where, okay, let's catch up on the TV shows and how far have you gone?
It's things like that, being able to interact just like you're working in an office.
Have that human.
Have that whole human thing. With Beth, it's great. Every Friday we have these meetings. And literally, we're all in the Zoom call 15 minutes before it even starts, picking on each other. And somebody comes up, oh, what are they wearing? Oh, what are you doing? Oh, I like your background. And we all have silly backgrounds going on. And
it's exactly that. It's that human thing. And I mean, that kind of goes into, I mean, this maybe goes more into the management side of it. I think we can think in terms of hours and time worked, and we can think in terms of stuff done.
Yeah.
And there are ways, I think people just think of them in one way or another. I've always thought of it in terms of stuff done.
Yes.
Like, if I'm managing someone, I don't particularly care how many hours they work. As long as they get the shit done, I don't care. But when you start looking at hours worked, working from home becomes a real problem when you're trying to track those things. Because honestly, if you're in an office, you take a bathroom break, you're not going to stop the clock for your bathroom break, or you go to get the water cooler, or you have to change the toner in the printer.
Yeah,
those things, they're not things you really consider billable time. They're just kind of there's always some sort of an admin allotment for even the most rigid of billable time things, there's some sort of an admin allotment for things like that that just have to do with running an office. And you don't really have that, for if you're really billable time, I remember doing that. Like, I stopped my timer because I had to go to the washroom, started the timer when I came back, but when you're talking about 40 hours a week or 8 hours a day or something like that, it's very different to have that in a work from home setting and a remote work setting as opposed to an administrative or office setting, because there's always, even for people who aren't admin people, like, you have to wait for a computer to boot up.
Mm-hmm.
You have the water cooler, your printer ran out of paper.
You're doing more on your own too, because here, right, for example, you log into a remote server, Lisa logs into a remote server. You don't worry about updating anything, right, because it's all done just by the nature of the technology. It's all done for you. But certainly, if you were here in an office or did things differently, that local PC might need the updating, and it might or might not get done for you.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with software. Lisa, everywhere you've worked as a remote person, you've been paid as a contractor and on commission?
No, I work part-time for a gentleman in Portland, Oregon, and it's year-round here and there. And it's I work for him as an employee. I am his tax preparer.
Oh, okay.
It's not full-time, but yeah, I've been an employee of his now for 3 years.
Trisha,
dictates everything that I do.
Other than here, Trisha, what have you? Everything's been
contract basis. Yeah. Now with other, she has offered to take me back on as an employee. I don't want it. I can't work for her. I have no problem consulting for her, professional. I can't work for her. And so that comes back to the control thing. But it has pretty much always been contract basis. Yeah.
Lisa, you have any closing thoughts? Because we are over on time, but this has been a really fabulous conversation.
When you're hiring remote people, is just be upfront with them about what the pay is, what you expect from them, and things like that, and have a written contract. The written contract that spells out everything you expect is the best thing to have.
Even a memorandum of understanding. I'll do this, you'll do that.
Yes.
Okay. Trish, what do you think? Trisha, anything?
I mean, one, there are just people who aren't cut out for it, and there's a personality thing, and it's an art to suss that out. I don't know that there's any hard factors that'll tell you when you're talking with someone, like, can they do this? Obviously, someone who's worked remotely before, or a large part before, is gonna that's not gonna be an issue. But for someone who hasn't exactly, there are just some people who can't. And it has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with them. Some people just aren't cut out for it. The second thing I've always noticed is that we like to use email a lot more than anything else. I actually tend to use, I like to use email, but I will oftentimes, if I jump on a Skype and just do an instant message or, make a phone call, it can save 15, 20 emails. Mm-hmm. We tend to get caught in this loop of you got to keep the email, and email's nice, but phone equivalents can save a lot of time. And I mean, I am a very, very big fan of Skype because I know Zoom's the hot thing these days, but Skype, the Skype chats, Skype instant messaging, Facebook message, frankly, all those things. It's just it's a lot faster. If sometimes it can just save you a bunch of emails back and forth and back and forth.
Real-time conversation is always quicker than that. Remember, email is 45-year-old technology at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So, thank you both for joining me today. Thank you to Ellie, and I don't think I thanked Portia, and I did thank everyone else. Everyone, I hope this was a great benefit for you for tuning in. It will be available both for purchase on demand and for those of you that already paid for it to watch it on replay on Big Marker. It takes about a day for it to process. Thanks again, and everybody have a great day. Lisa, nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you. Thank you.